Hello and welcome to the Car Care Reviews channel, and welcome to the 2025 Subaru WRX. And in today's video, we're going to do a proper technical review under the hood, take a look underneath it, inside and out, some things we like, some things we do not like, right after this. Let's start our technical review under the hood with the engine. This is a 2.4 liter boxer turbo direct injected 4-cylinder engine. It is the FA24F. Let's dive into its mechanical construction. So you have two valve covers because it's the boxer engine. They are both plastic. You do have a two-piece cylinder head with a little cam cradle and then the cylinder head itself. You do have dual cam on each side, not overhead, because you can call them overhead, I suppose, in a boxer, but not exactly. You do have manual valve adjustment, so it does have a setup where you can actually put lifters, but they call them a pivot, a rocker, because it does have roller rockers, but the place where you normally find a lifter is just a fixed arm, and then you adjust the valve with a little cap that sits on top of the valve. I don't know why Subaru is still doing that, because there's giant, they basically have to pull the engine out to do valve adjustment, and they have some issues with valve adjustments. Dual variable valve timing. You do have kind of the oil controlled solenoid that sits in the front. It's the simplest way to do it, most efficient, direct. You don't have a lot of lines going everywhere. It's actually keeping it very simple. This does have two timing chains, one for each bank. They both have internal hydraulic tensioners, and this has possibly one of the biggest front timing cover you're going to see lengthwise. It just runs the entire length of the engine. Very difficult to handle in service, but it does have the oil pump at the nose of that front timing cover, right on the nose of the crank. The block is a two-piece block. The cool thing about this particular engine is you can actually pull the rod and the piston out without separating the block, like some iterations of the FA series engines. So the caps are rotated to the side, so the cut is rotated, so you can actually access them and pull the rod out without having to split the case. So that, I suppose, is pretty cool. The cooling system is super archaic. I mean, I don't know how they're able to cool this car, honestly, in 2025, but it works. They have a mechanical water pump, thermostat, no fancy valves, no nothing, just ancient. And you know what? That does mean it is very simple. And it cannot be simpler than this. The other thing is the fuel injection. So this has only direct injection. I mean, Subaru and Toyota, they work together on the BRZ, FRS type deal. I don't know why they didn't catch on, because the D4i system is actually pretty cool. This one only has direct injection, not super chronic with carbon buildup or whatnot. You do have the high pressure fuel pump on the driver's side here, right on top of the cylinder head. Now this car, of course being a WRX, is turbocharged. Yeah, single turbo in the front. It is air-to-air intercooler. Sits on top, iconic intercooler that is through the hood scoop, gets cooled. Top mount, this is actually meant for rallying, because if you put it in the front, you're going to fill up with debris and that's it. This turbo is oil and coolant cooled. It does have a electronic wastegate and an electronic bypass valve built into the turbo, and they are not serviceable separate. That's not a good idea, because basically if your wastegate, something happens with it, breaks, sticks, electronic part fries, of course, because it's such a hot space, you have to replace the entire thing. That's a terrible idea. I don't know why they did it that way, but that's what they decided. And this engine has a vacuum pump. So direct injection engines in certain operating conditions will have very low vacuum. So this has a vacuum pump to produce vacuum. But you may be asking, why does a 2025 car need vacuum? Because Subaru decided their Halo model is not cool enough to get their new electronic booster that most of their cars have. That's why they don't have a vacuum pump anymore. This one has just a regular booster. Possibly because this has Brembo brakes and that's the only booster that will work with it. It's a possibility, nothing confirmed, but I just wish they would have put their latest and greatest tech in their Halo model. That would be pretty cool. Well, let's talk about the transmission options with the WRX. So certain trims, like this one, the TS, only comes in a 6-speed manual transmission, and that is just a beautiful transmission. One thing about this car, see, when we drove the BRZ, we reviewed some time ago, the feel of the clutch, it's just horrendous for daily driving. It just doesn't feel right. I don't know. I don't know how to describe it, but if you've driven manual transmission for a long time, you know what I mean. It just doesn't feel strange. This one, on the other hand, the feel is great. I mean, it's good for spirited driving. It's good for daily driving. It's comfortable. It just feels right. That's the best part about it. Then the second option, it is a Subaru Performance Transmission. Let me translate that. It's a CVT with a few tweaks. You're going to find out later in this video that this car is a heartbreaker for me because they have gone a little soft, and there is nothing that emphasizes that statement, which we're going to talk about at the end of this video, than a CVT transmission in a performance car. I rest my case on that. Let's put it that way. But moving past that disappointment, let's talk about everything else here, because there's one thing about Subaru that they've done in the past, and they still do today. They don't do flimsy very well. Things are solid, and that's, even the plastic is solid. Subaru has a thing. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. We're just gonna keep rolling with it. We don't care what other manufacturers are doing. I see that a lot here, because even though this is a Halo performance model, whatnot, it has a lot to share with other models, where it becomes, we're gonna focus on mass producing this part, make it very well made, and just copy and paste to all. You see that here. Quality is really good. Even the plastics feel good. Everything feels good. And this engine did get some revisions through its life. And one of those very important revisions, especially in a car like this, does have an oil cooler. Sits right underneath the oil filter, which I love that it's very accessible spot. And then this engine in its previous iterations, you used to have an issue where you take sharp corners, all the oil will pull up on one side and intermittently run low on oil. So what they did here to counteract that, they put these big baffles in the valve cover to kind of fill up that void. So now oil, when it wants to pull on one side, it won't be able to. So I like that this is a later iteration of this engine, and the quality of things are really nice. The engine drives very nice. It's not the most powerful in the world, at least by 2025 standards. There's a lot of cars with one less cylinder that makes a lot more power, but it does have decent torque. I like the sound of the engine itself, because as a boxer, boxers have a unique sound to them, but the exhaust system leaves a little bit more to be desired. That's the thing we're seeing with a lot of Halo models. They're just too quiet. They need to be a little bit more, it's a performance car. Maybe at least a sport mode on the exhaust or something would be nice, but it doesn't have any of that. Let's take a look underneath the Subaru WRX. In the front here, I like that remember this is WRX. That's a pretty heavy duty shield here. Plastic here, I get it, but there's actually metal behind that. That's pretty cool. I like how the engine and everything is tucked up, and this is a design they went with to give you kind of protection, because you're supposed to use this off-road. That's at least the intent. This, of course, is the Boxer setup. Turbos in the front. Here is the exhaust manifold. It's kind of a long, strange exhaust manifold. With that, let's take a look at the front here. So you got aluminum lower control arm with a ball joint built into it, a steel knuckle. Axle, of course, this has Subaru symmetrical all-wheel drive. They are painted on both ends. You have a McPherson strut at the top. However, this McPherson strut in this particular trim, the TS, does have an adjustable shock. Does have the actuator right there. It actually works pretty good. The difference between sport and normal is a pretty wide difference, where you can have it where it's stiff and you can have it where it's comfortable. That is actually pretty cool. This particular trim also has the optional Brembo brakes, which are gold in color. Super cool, actually. This is something with the WRX, and prior to that, WRX STI. Manual transmission, 6-speed manual transmission. It's actually a very, very nice transmission to driving wise. But if you look at this one, this is how they integrate their symmetrical all-wheel drive differential. Front differential is kind of built into the transmission, built into everything. So you see just the axles. What I love about this car is, in this particular setup, most cars that are rear-wheel drive, and it has all-wheel drive. It's such a complicated setup here. You can't even see anything. You got an axle going through the engine, but because this has a boxer, look at the back of the engine. I can see everything. There's your vacuum pump right there. Super accessible. This side, yeah, you have the exhaust, but still, you could reach all the way up to the top. Look at that starter right there. That's what makes things a little bit better with service. Now, the exhaust does come here. It's okay. It's not bad. I'm not gonna be too hard. Exhaust quality is decent. It's not the top that we've seen, but it's nowhere near the bottom. So there is that. Now you do have a drive shaft that goes on top. You do have this heat shield. You see it clear here. It does have a center support bearing right here, and everything else. The car is decently covered except this area. But what I love about it is if you look here, I mean, they put this stuff where it needs to be, and it looks very high quality, very nice finish on it. Really like the seam sealer when they apply it properly. Now we come to here, you do have a saddle fuel tank that comes on both ends. You have this really heavy shield here, which is pretty cool. Come to the rear differential. It is a steel housing differential. It's not the biggest differential in the world. Obviously it's not meant for towing or heavy stuff, but this is meant for some off-road because it's a WRX. It is small, but I like that it's cast iron. That's pretty cool. Axles in the back, not big axles. They are painted on both ends. And looking at this rear suspension, you do have a steel knuckle, steel control arms. Upper control arm is aluminum with a built-in bolt joint. You do have a strut in the back, so you have the shock right here and the spring one assembly. If you turn around and look here, you do have the actuator. This is also an adjustable rear damper. The caliper is a Brembo caliper in the back as well. This does not have electronic parking brake or anything. It just have cable and the parking shoes and the rotor hat and whatnot. So the exhaust comes in one piece, splits into two. We gotta love this. Yeah, you have some openings, but it's properly covered. Everything looks good. Gotta say one thing about this car, and not just this particular Subaru, all Subarus lately that we've been reviewing. I like the quality of things. They're not, I don't see a lot of question marks or flimsy stuff. See, Subaru does one thing really well. They design something, and they design it well, and they just, for the next 20 years, they just keep going at it. Because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And they do that part super well, and it shows. Let's take a look at the outside of the 2025 Subaru WRX. Of course, with the WRX part being in red. It's very cool. Pretty cool color on this one. And here's the interesting part. The WRX for the longest time, it's a very basic design that is extremely striking. And this one, I feel like looks-wise, for the most part, looks pretty good. It's not over the top, but it definitely catches your eye when you see it on the street. Headlights are very minimal, very small, but they have a very nice design, very nice LED, kind of angry look type deal. And then the scaffolding at the bottom is all black and has a strange pattern to it. Not my favorite thing, but I understand it in a car like this. The iconic hood scoop that is of course functional. This is where the intercooler is, looks very cool. And the hood, I love the hood design where it's like it kind of wraps around, emphasizing the hood scoop and then disappears to a flat. That is actually a pretty cool design. Now this car does not have a radar sensor in the front because this has Subaru's eyesight, so you have the two cameras on the windshield. That's how they've done it. Moving around to the side here, this is where things, how should I say, fall off. Let's talk about the good. Good is, that's a pretty good looking wheel. Gotta say that. This TS trim. That's a very nice wheel. The fender arches. We gotta talk about that. I don't know what's going on with Subaru. I guess they had an engineer or designer that decided to draw a little scribble and became this shape. I really dislike it. I feel like it is just, again, looks are a matter of taste. But don't like those. The body itself, though, is pretty simple. You have, this comes out a little bit, it's not over the top. The back is more emphasized with this part coming out, and it kind of gives you a little bit of a dimension. In these cars, the WRXs usually have had a dimension, and then they curved the bottom skirt to come out to give it more of a kind of a design dimension, and then you have this little aerodynamic flap here that helps, hopefully. Going back to the back here, you have another, I mean, this is, I don't get this part. Sorry, we're hopping a lot about this. I mean, even the side marker has this strange shape. I don't know what, this just, I'm trying to find a nice way to say it. This looks hideous. There's no other way. It just completely looks off. Moving on. Coming to the back here, this is where I feel like, again, I'm running out of words to describe this. Hideous. What exactly happened here? Because this car has like, I feel like it's a parts bin special slash the people that designed the top didn't really talk to the people that designed the bottom, because the taillight, okay, I can see that. This non-bar thing and then the taillight. But then this comes out, goes in, and then comes out again, goes down. It just, this part is horrendous. Sorry, whoever designed it. It's okay, still love you, but that looks horrendous. And on top of it, it's black. And not black shiny, no, black with a strange pattern. It looks like, yeah, this is not the best looker. And the most important part, where's my wing? Where's my Subi wing? We got this little thing. Can live with that. And then the badging. Subaru. So we don't really need to write Subaru. We already know this is Subaru. Symmetrical all-wheel drive. Well, they're all symmetrical all-wheel drive, so why do we need to write it? WRX, that's perfectly fine. TS, perfectly fine. I feel like we can get rid of that, would be better. Quad tips, which, again, this is an enthusiast car. We can live with that. Let's look at the trunk. And this is actually a very important part of this car, because this is a kind of a capable performance car slash rally car, but it's also a car you can use every day. Look at that trunk. They got this part right, really right. That's a pretty decent sized trunk for a car like this. And if we look underneath here, this is not the Subaru part. Where's my spare tire? I guess there's no spare tire. I can kind of understand in a car like this. I gotta say it because you have massive wheels with, you know, specific tires. You're not gonna be able to put a spare tire in a symmetrical all-wheel drive. I get it, but spare tire would be nice. What I love about this is, and this is something we talked about. We looked underneath it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Most manufacturers would get rid of this or just give you nothing. Well, yeah, I got a little cover, but you have this harness here. They didn't bother covering it, which I don't blame them, because I don't want them to raise the price because of a little cover. So I get that. Let's take a look at the interior of the Subaru WRX. Lots of blue. I mean, I understand WRX and blue are hand in hand, but there's one thing to be said. This is a bit much. And the material they used makes it feel super cheap and just kind of out of place. I mean, the blue stitching on the dash looks really nice. I think that should have done it right there. This is a bit much because on the doors it just feels out of place. The material feels so cheap. Yeah. The rest of the interior, though, is simple. There isn't much going on. The only thing that is going on is this giant screen right in the middle. And Subaru's been doing this in a lot of models. I was going to say, this has quickly upgraded to the worst infotainment system in any car we have tested, especially in this particular one. For some reason, this one happens to be extra glitchy. There was a time when we got into this car, started driving. It took like 5 minutes for it to figure out what we're doing, because it was just frozen. It's like, okay, well, how do I change my HVAC controls? Even when you push the physical button, nothing happens. So yeah. This is a terrible idea, and they took all your physical controls of the HVAC except the temperature and front defrost, and yeah, it's not good. Doesn't have a wireless Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, but it's so glitchy, so slow, it's unbelievable. And then, of course, in the WRX, you do get a special screen on the gauge. It basically mimics normal gauges, which would have been fine if we had them here. And then you have a little gauge that's customizable with a switch that looks completely an afterthought add-on to a normal Subaru steering wheel. Speaking of the steering wheel, the controls are super basic, and they need to be that way. I love them. They're extremely basic. They're simple. You can't go wrong with that. The rest of the car, driving it here, it's not very quiet. Subarus are usually not quiet. But what I love about it is the ride is not what you expect it to be. So this particular one has adjustable suspension. So when you go into normal or standard or comfort mode, whatever you want to call it actually rides pretty decent. It rides like any other Subaru. You put it in Sport Plus though, and then it gets pretty serious. You can even adjust the steering wheel feel. It drives pretty good, but it feels like something is missing. If you've driven previous WRX, WRX STI, you'll feel like something is missing. That's all I'll tell you. And in this particular trim, the TS, you have these Recaro seats, which are very rough, as you should expect them. The bolsters are very heavy. The seat is not meant for comfort, basically, and to be expected. But the cool thing is they're power seats. At least that was retained. That is pretty cool. Let's take a look at the back seat of the Subaru WRX. And this is a very important place in this car because that's the premise of this car. It's a fun performance car with a back seat for your family. I'm 5'7". This is my driving position. I have decent knee room. I have decent headroom. It's actually a pretty comfortable back seat, and that is a cool thing. The only problem with this back seat I see is when you sit here, you get front row seat to the hideous blue color and material. It just feels so rushed, so badly executed. It just, yeah. I mean, look at this back, the headrest. The stitch, the leather doesn't match here. It just looks not sitting right. And same thing with this one. This one is even worse. The color is just horrible. Center console, which we didn't mention in the front, sits all the way in the back where you can't even use it as an armrest. It has a blue lid, which looks completely off, and it just looks horrendous. That's the only part I dislike about this interior, opposite of what most would think. I feel like if they've done it more, a little bit more classy, more sophisticated, maybe the stitching, a better color blue, because this is a bit much. It just feels like we just put the blue everywhere just to remind you there's a WRX, but untastefully so. That's what I'm going to put it at. Let's talk about some things I do not like about the WRX, and this is going to break my heart. Talk about it in a little bit, that break my heart part, but the whole thing. Because the whole point about this car versus any other Subaru is your heart needs to be beating out of your chest when you see it and you drive it. It does do that, but if you've driven a previous one, it's gonna feel soft. It's losing its magic. It's time to discontinue it and leave it as a legend. So it would live on as a legend. Because right now, I feel like this is just a last-ditch effort to just make it, push it out the door and see what happens. That's how it feels, and it breaks my heart. It really does. And just to add more on top of that, I'm sorry, that infotainment system is just getting worse. I really dislike it in other Subaru models, completely out of place and out of character for Subaru, but in this particular one, it is horrendous. There is no other way to say it. Just terrible. So, the 2025 Subaru WRX. Folks, this one is a tough one, and this one actually tugs at a string of my heart because I got a confession to make. I am Team WRX STI, not Team Evo. So, if you know what I mean, you know what I mean. But this car, I feel like we're dragging on. That's how it feels like. This is why all good movies, series, come to an end. All TV series come to an end. This one is getting there. See, the Mitsubishi Evolution, which was the main competitor for this, and this is the times where the WRX STI and the Mitsubishi Evolution were like the top. They were tangled, they were competing, and they were the top. Nothing came close to what they did. Here's a family sedan that is super fun to drive, super capable, both on-road and off-road, and they didn't cost a small fortune. They were more expensive than their counterparts, of course, but they were accessible. Mitsubishi Evolution said goodbye a long time ago because they knew if we keep going, it's going to lose the exclusivity. Unfortunately, this one is getting there. The reason is I was super excited we were getting a WRX. I mean, I was over the moon because I am Team WRX. But this one, driving it, Look, it has the same recipe. It's a 4-door sedan you can use for your family. It is well made. Don't want to say it's reliable, but it's relatively reliable for the kind of car that it is. It is well made. It is fun. It has a proper all-wheel drive system. It makes decent power. But the problem is 2025 has come around. And if you look today at similar cars that are like this, you have the GR Corolla. You have the Civic Type R. Although the Civic Type R is not all-wheel drive, but that's a proper 2025 car. This feels like a fading legend. To put it in one sentence, it's losing the magic. Feels soft, feels conservative. It feels held back. It feels like we're just gonna give it one last hurrah, and this is it. Because the looks, not as striking as they once were. The inside, I mean, if you take the Recaro seats, average Joe will not even know this is anything special. That's a problem. And then driving-wise, which is the most important part. Look, it drives great if you've never driven a previous one. It drives great if you are selling your 2-door sports car because you got a family, you want a fun car that is new to buy. But if you've driven a previous one and you're an enthusiast of this particular platform, it's gonna feel a little bit disappointing, a little bit soft, too held back. Doesn't sound very exciting. The drive is, while the suspension in this particular trim does a fantastic job at giving you kind of the best of both worlds, but still, there's always that voice inside of you as you drive it. What happened? What happened to the WRX? That's the feeling. That's the only problem. And the worst part about it is, the gas mileage is, although in a car like this, I get it, it's horrendous. For a car of this size engine and this level, and performance levels wise, all I'm going to tell you is if you're looking for an all-wheel drive, fun car that you can still use for your family, go drive a GR Corolla, because the prices these start at around the same price, and other than the trunk space possibly being bigger because it's not a hatchback, this is going to have a hard time. Something, they need to kind of bring the fire in this, but the problem is the fire has been burning so long, there's no more fire to burn. That's how I feel about this, and it really breaks my heart because I love the WRX STI, and I'm just going to say it proudly. I am Team WRX STI, not Team Evolution. But kind of breaks my heart, makes me feel old. Like this is the end of a legend, and it's coming to it, unfortunately. Folks, I hope this video was helpful and informative. I hope you learned something new. If you like it, consider giving it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing to the channel. Check out some of my other videos. And until the next video, folks, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and you have yourself a wonderful day.